But in the event, when they came to do their sums, they decided that a gravity system starting further up the Potter catchment, so in order to go to Canberra, was going to be a little too expensive. So, noting that they were looking at 25,000 people, perhaps 50. They came on and located the Potter Dam where they have at present. It was, the water was conveyed to Canberra then by a pumping station on the banks of the Potter, all you are familiar with that, and a pipeline system. Eventually, of course, what Scribner foresaw came to pass when the Bindora Dam was constructed, for which we went on. Now, the Potter Dam is a very simple one. Even I could design it, but not the next one which we'll come to. It's a straight walled one, quite simple, where the weight of the concrete it neutralizes the force of the water. And it was to have been 100 feet high, but they went up to about a third of that, and then extended again. Now it's got just capacity of a miserable 5 gigaliters of water. That's the dam which may or may not play a part in the future. Now, when we talk about Canberra's water supply, as well as other aspects of Canberra, there is a very sharp division. I think it's sharp. And that is in the early days, nobody really thought that Canberra was going to take off. Canberra was something that they wanted. So let's give them the minimum and that's it. And so the growth of Canberra was extremely low right up to the time that the NCDC, National Capital Development Commission, was formed in 1958. At that time, starting from scratch, 1911 or whatever, the population had only reached up to 40,000. But thereafter came the surge of people, I'm sure some of us here are part of that surge, who came with the transfers to the national capital in the early 60s. And suddenly, quite suddenly, the picture of water, as well as the other wastewater and other things, took on a new picture. You had to get cracking of providing for the population. Now, noting that most big projects take about 7 years from go to war, at that time, believe it or not, the population in the early 60s, middle 60s, late 60s was 12% per annum, which meant that it doubled every 6 years. So as soon as there was a whisper of an idea in one mind that you had to get stuck and do something about it. And they're doing something about it. The next dam, the Bindora Dam, is a beautiful thing. It's a work of art. It's called a double curvature thin arch dam, designed by an extremely competent engineer, now the late Ken Harding. It was a curved, double curved this way and curved that way. And therefore, it required very little concrete compared to the mass that is required for the dam. And that's the dam I wouldn't even have dreamt of starting designing, but thanks to Ken Harding and his team, the dam stands there. Now that dam is at a particular height where Scribner's concept of a gravity supply was able to come to being. And so from the Cotton Dam, you get a gravity supply to Canberra. Now that gravity supply main is also a beauty. It's 5 foot diameter, something like this, all steel, welded, and laid in really tiger country. When you look at the photographs of that area, it really was quite a business to put those pipes in. An 18-foot pipe weighed 7 tons. But put it in, it was, and in 1962, it was completed. It was 19 kilometers long and completed in January 68, I beg your pardon. But then came the point of view that the Dora and the Cotter was going to be adequate for 96,000. But suddenly, doubling every 6 years meant that you had to get tracking on the next one. And the next one that they got tracking on was the Corin. Now, I'm sure you've picked at the Corin. The Corin dam was rock filled, and by this time there's a lot of expertise in Australia following the Snowy Mountains scheme of that sort of dam. And that was built very quickly. And in fact, it was built during a time of drought. And the contractors thought it was Christmas. No rain, so they ran their pump every 24 hours a day, and the dam was completed ahead of schedule and well below and at budget price. But there's one problem. We were in a drought and the dam was empty. So therefore, they had the brilliant idea, why don't we get water from Tangara and let it through this is actually that, let it through the Murrumbidgee to Canberra. Now, we bought water at great expense. We bought the water at the rate it would have been used for powering electricity, not water. But unfortunately, only 10% of that water finally came to Canberra because the farmers said, oh, beauty, we haven't seen water in the river for so long, put our pumps in, take it up all we want. And that's why we ended up with only 10%. But by that time, the drought had broken. Next, we decided that we would use the right given to us. Because in the Googong, I hope I mentioned it, the New South Wales government gave us paramount water rights over the Queanbeyan River. Paramount water rights. And when the sums were done after a lot of investigation, the question was, should we go to Tennant or should we go to Googong? They were fairly equal. But at that time, both parties were friends. The federal government and the ACT government. And so they decided, my gosh, if they're friends now, let's take Kapus Plug the day, Carpe Diem, and build the dam at Googong when there's going to be no problem whatsoever. And in fact, the approval came through in less than 3 months. The New South Wales government wanted to call it the Queanbeyan Canberra water supply, and we were quite happy. Let's call it the Queanbeyan Canberra water supply. So Googong Dam was then built, and but Googong was on an inhabited catchment, whereas the Cotter was not. So therefore, along with Googong had to be full water treatment works, the full box and dice. You might have heard there is a treatment plant at Stromlo, but actually that's a make-believe plant. One day we woke up and read in the Canberra Times that the minister said there will be a water treatment works. So we gave him one. And what he got was one only with sedimentation and no filtration and the transfer of fluoride and chlorination up to there. So he got that one. Now, Googong, on the other hand, is the whole bit, including activated carbon, and my friend Rich over here had a lot to do with that particular project.